Okay, we are recording. So to the folks that aren't here, I'll just say a quick hello. My name's Kelly Heiser. You probably all know me. I'm Rebel's CEO, one of its co-founders. And we also have Preston here, who I'll let introduce himself real quick.
Hi, I'm Preston Austin. I'm Rebel's Chief Technical Architect and co-founder, and mostly work on technical aspects of the platform in terms of their design for library partners and delivering all of our services from prior to install through delivery of music to mobile devices from the collections. Thanks.
And we also have Megan here, who's from Yarra Libraries in Melbourne, who's the one librarian who could make it in person. So she'll be personifying librarians for the call for us. So thanks, Megan. So we scheduled this call just to give folks kind of an update on some of the new features that we've been building into MusiCat over the last year or so, because we're pretty excited about some of the capacity that we can now support pretty easily for folks. So I have kind of a list of stuff that I thought I'd share, and that includes our new videos collection tool, a showcases tool that's still in beta, but is looking really great. CSS customizations, and I'll show you what that looks like on one of our newer partner sites. And then I wanted to also take a little bit and just kind of introduce folks to some of the documentation that we have, especially around setting up a new site. So we've worked really hard over the last 5 years with our partners to figure out, what's the most effective and efficient model for actually launching a site and a collection. And we, we're always kind of updating and tweaking, and that process keeps getting faster and faster. And part of that is because we have pretty solid documentation around it now. So I just want to introduce folks to, what that documentation looks like, and I'll share links too, so people can access it as well if you just want to kind of get a preview of kind of the package that we will hand to you, if you decide to get started with the MusiCat collection. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the information in there. And then we'll talk just briefly about some of our kind of newer projects that are coming up. One of them is support for artist payments. And then I'm going to ask Preston to talk a little bit about our mobile apps that are in development right now. So I'm going to share my screen here. And hopefully you all are seeing Multnomah County Libraries collection. Great. So this is Multnomah County Libraries video collection. And we actually developed the video collection tool for Multnomah and with them. And what this tool lets you do as a librarian is link to videos that you've uploaded to YouTube or to Vimeo, describe them in a bunch of different ways, and then publish them to your site. And you can see that Multnomah has a pretty good collection here. I think they are like pushing 20 videos at this point. And some of these are videos that were actually recorded in the library in collaboration with local filmmakers and that feature artists that are in the Multnomah collection, the Library Music Project collection that Multnomah has. So I'll click on one of these and kind of show you what an individual page looks like. So there's an embedded video that you can play right on the page. And then if I scroll down, I'll see some metadata about the video. And again, we worked with the library to kind of develop what the library and the creators who were involved wanted in terms of parameters to describe these video objects. And so that information appears over here. And then if the video is associated with the artist who's already in a collection, a librarian is able to link this to the artist page. And I can click here and go to this artist page and read more about them. And from there, I can also head back to their video page if I like. I'm going to click over to my next tab here and kind of show you the interface that a librarian uses to create these videos and publish them in a collection. So I just switched over to kind of the administrative side of things. And I'm not going to make any changes here because this is actually Multnoma's site, but I just wanted to show this to you with some real content. And so this is the basic form that the librarians there used to create this video collection. And you can see it super straightforward. You just fill in the fields for the information that you've got. You add your link to your video down here, and the admin page will preview for you to make sure you can check that your link is good. You can also upload or add a link to an image display for the list, so for that initial list page of videos that I showed you. And then you can save your work. You know, if you're working on a bunch of these and kind of want to publish them all together, you can be working on stuff and go back. And then when you're ready to publish, you just click the Save and Publish button, and it's as easy as that. So that's our videos collection tool. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about showcases. I'm gonna, again, move a tab over. And this is Edmonton Public Library's Capital City Records collection. They're one of our earliest partners. And they have this really great partnership with a local nonprofit called Legends of the Edmonton Music Scene. And the folks who run Legends have a ton of really rich and extensive historical material about artists and venues and media publications that all were part of Edmonton's musical scene going back to the early 20th century. And maybe even before that. I haven't explored all of this as extensively as I'd like at this point. But they have all this great content, and they really wanted to get it online somehow. And so they reached out to the public library to see if they could form a partnership. They knew about Capital City Records, and the library said yes, and got in touch with us about building a tool to support that. And so what's resulted is this showcases feature that really lets a library in partnership with local community members if you want. So we created actually a new category of users for this showcases functionality that allows you to invite folks to come in and add material, work on editing material, and if you want, even allow folks to publish stuff to your live site using this special user class. And so what Showcases lets you do and your community members who you've invited to contribute to your Showcases do is create these really rich pages about different historical figures. And so if I scroll down here, this is kind of the list page for their collection, and you can see there are a number of artists here. You've got just a single band and venue and media person at this point. This is really a work in progress that they're not promoting publicly yet, so this is kind of a preview for you folks. And you can kind of see their work in progress. I'm gonna go ahead and click on one of these pages so you can see what one looks like. This one is a pretty good example. So this is a page for an artist, Laura Vinson, and I'll just kind of slowly scroll down so you can see supports images, text, of course, and is pretty flexible, so it'll let you kind of build the page as you'd like. And so these are all created by those Legends volunteers. This page also supports sort of longer audio clips. So this group has a bunch of radio interviews. And so a lot of the pages here have clips, you know, that are 10, 45, an hour long, with interviews with the folks or the organizations in question. I think if we keep scrolling down here, there may be a picture gallery. Here's a timeline of awards for this artist. Yeah, more or less embedded videos are supported here. Yeah, and here's a picture gallery at the bottom. So pretty extensive pages, lots of information. And it's pretty flexible. We have a library who's using this kind of just to describe local venues, which I think is a really cool idea. And so there's a lot of flexibility in this tool in terms of how you can use it to describe the things that are happening in your particular community. And again, I'll give you kind of a peek at how this works on the admin side of things for librarians and those community users who are helping you build this collection or this part of your collection. So again, I'm going to switch a tab over here. And this is the showcases, review and publish section that librarians and community members are working on here. And what this, how this works is that you kind of build the content for your page on the left, and you get a preview on the right of the content. And so I'll scroll down here, and you can see that you can add various sections. So this section is a graphic. There are dividers. There are formatted text sections. And I'm going to actually scroll all the way down to the bottom here so that you can see down here the kind of list of different materials that you can add. So text, graphics, an image gallery, an audio section, a video section, and then there's some formatting support in terms of divider. So a pretty flexible tool that lets you kind of add, a variety of content about a variety of actors in your local musical scene that we're pretty excited about, because I think a lot of libraries are really interested in how they can use this to describe some more historic material like Edmonton is doing. Any questions about that before I go on to the next thing? Okay, so I'm going to switch tabs yet again and show you I think one of our snazziest looking sites right now. This is Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh's Stax collection, which I am super excited about because I live in Pittsburgh. So it's really fun. I get to pop over to the library and actually work with folks in person sometimes. So Stax, they have a really talented graphic designer on staff who had a pretty specific brand vision for the site. And he really, really, really wanted Black backgrounds for the headers and footers. And he wanted some more control over the site's fonts as well. So what we did for the Stax launch is we created support for custom CSS add-ons to sites. So I'll scroll down real quick so you can see the footer for Stax too. So again, nice crisp Black background there. Scroll back up to the top here. And this is nice because, we didn't create custom code for this site. We created custom code that supports all of our library partners. If anybody else wanted to, do a maroon background or really tweak stuff in pretty robust ways, that's now possible. Though we do recommend working really closely with us to make sure that the CSS is going to work really well and look great. So we're kind of happy to collaborate on that if that's something you want to talk about. So I'm going to click over a tab and show you what this looks like on the admin side of things. And so some of these are kind of basic options. So you can choose to override a site font or a site background. And here you can see for Stax that this override the site header and footer colors is turned on, and they're turned to black. And then we have this whole space where you can actually just put a custom CSS patch in the site, which we did to support some different fonts for Stax. So we were super excited. We were able to kind of help them realize their artistic vision for the site in a way that other partners can benefit from going forward. Questions about that? Okay, so I'm going to move away from talking about features and talk a little bit about some of our documentation. So I'm going to hop over a couple tabs now just to show you a Google folder. So this is a little less exciting visually, but this folder is super important. So this is what we hand all of our new library partners who come on board right at the point that they're really ready to kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of getting their site set up. And this contains several documents. This first one here, this MusiCat Collection Launch Guide, is kind of the big important one because it is a step-by-step instruction manual for everything you need to set up your MusiCat site. And then the rest of the documents in here, 2 through 6, are kind of support documents that dive into certain aspects of a collection on kind of a deeper level. And several of them are designed to face specific folks. So there's a DNS document that's designed for, you know, your IT person who's going to set up DNS. There's a designer guidelines document. There's a promotion document. So some of these are kind of, we've created them so you can kind of hand them to the professional or staff member that you'll be working with and say, hey, here's a ton of information about this. Let me know if you have questions. So that we are, as we're moving forward, reducing the amount of legwork that librarians have to do to kind of interface across departments and kind of arming them with the materials that they need to communicate with their team members and across their team really effectively. So I'll just kind of pop into each of these super quickly. I don't want to get bogged down in detail here. Oops, I'll go up to the top here. This is like I said, the kind of most important document that walks you through launching a MusiCat collection. And you can see my encouragement at the top to meet with us at the beginning of each of the 3 stages that we've broken this process down into. We just find that there are higher levels of success rates in terms of everything going really smoothly and kind of lower headache levels when you're kind of allowing us to just talk with you at kind of strategic points as you're launching the collection. So we really like to have those meetings. And so the first stage of this, you'll see in this table of content then links down to pretty detailed instructions throughout the document. But the first stage is a lot of planning. It involves the configurations that get set up for your site. So, you know, this is the stage when you'll create a logo and add it to the site that we set up for you. Pick the colors you want your site to have. It's when you'll, you know, decide on your artist license and make a bunch of choices about kind of copy and content for your site, and then actually get it set up in there. And you do that in collaboration with us. We kind of help you as much as you need as you go through this configuration and planning process. Stage 2 is when you run your first submission round. So it's the process of, you know, actually launching your site, opening submissions, jurying those submissions, and then sending invitations to artists, signing licenses with them. And then at the very last stage is when you launch the collection. So this is when you publish everything. This is when we make sure we have authentication set up if that's something that you want to do, and kind of do a couple of final design and content tasks and open the site up to the public. So that's kind of the process. We've been seeing that the length of time that this takes shrink. So we've now gone through this entire process in just between 9 and 10 months with our fastest library partner so far. And I believe strongly that we can make that even faster if a library came in kind of super prepared and ready to hit the ground running. So we're always kind of looking to get this process kind of moving quickly for folks, because we know the important thing is really getting this content available for your community, and that folks want to get to that stage as quickly as possible. So we're working to make that happen. In terms of the other supporting documentation, again, I'll pop into these just really quickly. I'll switch over to my next tab here. This is our resources document on artist licenses. And so here we've got links out to license templates that we now have, which are standard licenses. We have one that is for streaming and download, and one that is just for streaming, because we've started to see some libraries choose not to have downloads at all on their sites and just go with streaming only. So we have template licenses for both of those situations that you can take and are super easy to adapt for your library. But we've also got links here to examples from all of our library partners. So if you want to see the actual licenses that these templates are based on, you can do that. You can also see at this link, there are images of what the MusiCat licensing interface looks like, which is often something that legal counsel folks want to see. And so, as I mentioned, some of these documents are kind of designed for certain people. This is a great document that you can share with your legal counsel. And it contains a lot of information sort of about how we've structured licensing in MusiCat. So we have explanations about license types, sort of technically in the site, but then also, you know, a sort of high level description of what the license content and parameters are. We have information in here about DMCA takedowns, and a link to more information if that's important for folks, as well as information about electronic signatures. And so this is really based on sort of like the greatest hits of questions we get from library lawyers, and kind of designed to help folks have those conversations effectively. I'm going to skip the DNS document, not because I don't think DNS is interesting, I do, but because it feels like a little level of technical detail that maybe isn't super helpful at this stage. I'm always happy to talk about it or send you to Preston to talk about it. But I'll poke in here to the designer guidelines for MusiCat sites. So again, a document that's designed to go to a team member, namely a designer or maybe a marketing person. And this has parameters for all the different kinds of image assets that we'll need, brand colors for this site. We've got examples here so that folks can really see you know, exactly what these look like. Here's some examples of carousel banners, both sort of what we need the image to be from the designer and then what it looks like on the site. And we also have some guidelines for the assets that artists are going to provide to you, which the big ones in terms of images are their artist banners and then their album covers. And so we've got some examples of what those look like. I'll pop over yet another tab. This is a more recent document that I'm really excited about and that I worked pretty closely with a couple librarians to produce. It's a guide for promoting your collection. And it links you out to some really great examples and resources from some of our partners. So there are things like example social media toolkits that libraries share with their artists to try and get their artists to promote the collection when they launch or publish new batches of albums. There's sort of example press stories here that can help you as you're kind of thinking about how to design press releases and talk to local media. And then there's kind of a step-by-step roadmap here that takes you from, the first part here talks about kind of building your team, both at the library and then with some key community partners, both individuals and organizations, kind of building your brand in collaboration with those folks. And then I'll scroll down here. The second part is more about getting the word out. So once you've kind of gone through that internal process, then you're ready to like tell the world. So we talk a bit about that. And then lastly, I'll scroll down, is kind of a guide moving forward. So, okay, like you went through this process at the very beginning, but then what do you do for your next round and the round after that? How do you keep things fresh? Like what's a good process for that? So this covers all aspects of that. And as I mentioned before, we're always kind of tweaking and updating these things. So we sort of keep learning from folks as we go along, and we'll update these documents as we do that. Okay, and I think there's just one more of these, which I'll pop over to. Yes, this is the, these are our guidelines for jurying. So I get a lot of questions about jurying. It's a really important aspect of building these collections. We've realized not just kind of for the curation aspect of it, but because we really encourage our library partners to work with community leaders and invite them to help jury the collection. And what we've realized over the years is that those folks are really, really key in terms of being ambassadors for your collection and your library. So yes, some of them will really help with curation and be great at that, but But I think even more importantly, those folks are going to help promote the collection and get the word out. They're going to help draw in submissions. A lot of artists will be really excited if you can put together an awesome community jury, because they want to get exposure to those people. So this document is all about like who to look for, what kinds of people to look for, how to build a diverse jury, and following on that, a diverse collection that's really representative of the people who live in your community, and then kind of how to work with them through the process. So lots of information here about how to do those things. Okay, that's a lot of information, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of our documentation for setting up a new collection. Before I started recording, I mentioned to Megan, and I think this is something that may be useful to folks who are watching this, other folks who are watching this. I also have a document that provides a bunch of resources and ideas about how to pitch a Music Hat collection to local musicians, to your library community and library administrators, and to the community at large. So kind of the groundwork that you want to be doing in order to get a local music collection going at your library. And so I'll make sure to share a link to that along with all of these documents when I follow up from this meeting. Okay. So I am going to stop sharing my screen because that's all of the content that I had to share with folks. Megan, do you have any questions about that before I move on to the last section, which is kind of what's new and coming up for us?
Not really, but it's really good to see all of the key documentation that's kind of behind. I do have a quick question around the community jury versus curation, because I know that there are kind of two models. So you can either invite someone to come along and curate a collection, or to have the community jury model. I'm curious about if there's any library services that have chosen one and then switched over to the other, or do you find that people make that decision and they stick hard and fast to that decision throughout the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, so Nashville was our library who decided, we live in Nashville, we have these amazing celebrities, like let's have a single celebrity curate and jury a single round for us. And we were like, cool, that sounds awesome. And like when I got to set up Ann Power's admin account, I was really excited because I think she's a great music journalist. And I think that model worked okay for them. I think, it lent star power to the site. It was kind of a cool thing. But they ultimately decided that it wasn't a super healthy way to do this. And so we actually don't recommend that you get just a single juror as kind of a regular thing. I think if you wanted to do kind of a mini round or some kind of special promotional event, that it could be a good and fun kind of exercise for that. But as the core model, we found that what's really important about a jury is that they really draw in submissions. And so the fewer community jurors you have, the fewer, it just lowers your capacity to get the word out to musicians in a really organic and authentic way. That having a really great community of jurors, it does really well. And it's also, it's a little bit harder. It can be a little bit harder to get folks to actually do the work if you're just depending on one person. Whereas if you have a handful of jurors, maybe 3 or 4 will be really great and on top of things. And if, one of them never does any reviews for you, but is like really great on social media, then, that's okay, right? You don't necessarily need everyone to be doing the same kinds of work. And so my recommendation for folks is to do the community of jurors model. And then we're always really happy to talk about other ideas for special events or partnerships or those kinds of things.
It's really helpful because that was one of the things that we've kind of been talking about, and we were leaning towards the community juror. But I said, well, we'll go back and we'll have a look and see what the balance is. But I think that's that benefit of others having come before and they've kind of trialed it. So thank you for that. Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. So I am going to talk really quickly about one new service that we're offering, and then I'm going to let Preston talk a little bit about mobile apps development, and then we can wrap things up. So one of the things we know is a lot of work for libraries is paying artists. And it's more work for some libraries than others. And so we have a couple partners coming on board right now who we're going to be developing a new model in partnership with, where it won't change the licensing agreement at all. So libraries will still be licensing music directly from local musicians. But what will change is that Rabble will become the payer for those musicians. And so we'll actually cut the checks to musicians. And so that means that the library doesn't have to do that work. And that's really good for some libraries, because sometimes libraries have to set up every single artist as a vendor. Often libraries have to collect invoices, W-9s from artists. And Rabble, as a kind of small, nimble organization, does not have those same bureaucratic restraints. So we're pretty excited to help folks with this. And we have not worked out every single nut and bolt here, but the basic model that we're developing with these new partners is that either with their annual MusiCat subscription or at the beginning of a round, a library will let us know how many albums they're hoping to publish. We'll submit an invoice for the amount of total amount of honorariums plus a processing fee. And then we will monitor as folks are signing licenses, and we'll send out checks. So we don't need the library to do anything around that other than to give us the money so that we can pay the artists. So we'll kind of keep track and send checks out probably on a weekly schedule, I think, at this point, which should be plenty of time to get checks to folks within a 30-day span of time. And then, we can add additional amounts. If sometimes, a library says we want to publish 50 albums and then they really want to publish 54. So we can, tack stuff on if we need to, and we'll kind of figure out exactly the best ways that those will work for everybody as we move forward. But yeah, that's going to be happening. We'll probably actually start doing the work around that next year in 2020. And we'll be putting together a pretty solid model for that by the end of the year. And Preston, can I hand it over to you to talk about mobile apps?
Sure. Before I start, did you have any questions about the payment stuff? Obviously, there might be some international issues there that change it around.
Yeah, I think we'll have to have a chat about what the international kind of side of things might look like. But I think that's a really positive model going forward, especially for some of the smaller places. Like I was nodding my head that having to raise everybody as a vendor, I know that pain, especially when it's a small one-off payment. So I think it's a good initiative. Yeah.
And I don't know if like Swift is the common form of transfers for folks there, but we could certainly do electronic transfers from a domestic bank if that was the appropriate solution to internationalize the service. So it's really the admin part of it that is mostly how we're thinking about making it automated and easy. So I don't have a demo for mobile. I was just going to talk a little bit through what the history is and the near future of mobile application development for MusiCat. So the sites, the collections that exist for each of our library partners are developed with a kind of a mobile first reasoning about design. So Kelly was showing everything in desktop browsers, but if you go to a narrow mode screen for an iPhone, Android device, or a tablet, you will see the pages reconfigure themselves nicely. So it's a dynamic and responsive design, and it works reasonably well on mobile. But the unique aspects, especially of features we're adding to the collections, are suboptimal in terms of how a web browser performs for pretty much any music website online. And this has been a long-standing sort of area that we wanted to focus on. So specifically, phones have a tendency, when you put a web browser tab in the background, to kind of put it to sleep. And this has a few implications for music. One of them is in some extreme cases, music just stops playing. And in very common cases, specifically on the iPhone, it's
not reliable for tracks to go from one track to the next, to the next, to the next track, backgrounded. Plus, you can't entirely reliably get all the functions of the device supported properly. So when you background a music player app, you want to have a play pause button show up on your fancy watch, and you want the little button on your cord that goes to your white earphones to work, or the double tap thing, the newer ones. So there's like 30 versions of that in the world. And if you're plugged into the binary toolkits for playing audio, you don't get them all for free, but you can straightforwardly on the major platforms support all of it, along with music playback in the background, tracks that start faster when you hit the play button. Again, iOS is really, it's funny, right? Apple led the charge into, I'm going to play music from a thing in my pocket as a true mass product. And then they made it very, very, very hard to deliver that full experience from the web that actually works better on Android. So we are currently building a mobile app. It's actually our third mobile app. We've been experimenting with different prototypes, and we've finally determined sort of how we're going to go ahead with this on iOS that we're happy with, and we've proved all the critical bits. Specifically, we have a mobile app under development now where the music starts pretty much immediately. It goes track to track immediately. It reliably plays in the background. All of the device APIs that allow you your play pause button and show you what's currently playing and turn it off if a phone call comes in, all of that stuff will be properly supported, and we're happy with how it's going to work. And I lost track of the order of my list, but I think those were the key bits. And nothing goes to sleep in the background, if I didn't say that already. So this is a pretty big milestone for us, and in some ways it's sort of the final piece of the full Musicat version 1 platform, covering everything we initially envisioned it covering very well for libraries. In terms of how we're going to release this application, it'll exist within the app stores, as there will be a Musicat app that can be downloaded. Collections will retain their individual identities and will decide if they wish to opt into this. So the administrative section of publishing your Musicat collection will make decisions about whether any of your music appears, and it will appear with the identity of your collection and the identity of your library also controlled within admin. So just as you've seen with the other admin sections, we tend to focus pretty strongly on everything that's going to appear in a list. You get to decide what it looks like. In this case, there will be a directory of collections that have elected to show up here at all. And then within that directory, when you select a library, you'll be browsing that collection. So we're not building iTunes or Spotify for all these collections that kind of mixes it all in a big melting pot and everybody loses their identity. That's not what this is about. We haven't determined exactly how pricing and activation will work on this, and we are building in a direction so that if a collection wanted to do a custom application, an application branded for that collection, that opportunity isn't foreclosed, but that would be a custom development project. So that would be a separate project from the Musicat app. But it's not a ground up new application to do so. It would be a straightforward project. So we're open to hearing from people who really want that. But actually, we think from an end user perspective and looking at what's popular in library mobile apps today, that probably the starting point that's going to be most valuable to people is the one that's straightforward to just describe. You go to the app store for your device, do a search for, words that describe the app, but basically Musicat player, and then you'll be able to select your library within that. That's what we think is going to be the onboarding path. But again, we'll be working with our partners as we get closer to release to decide what exactly should that look like and how would people want to promote it. We don't currently have a timeline that we're committing to for this as well. So timeline, pricing, precise onboarding, it's a little bit in flux. We're actually interested in hearing what people have to say, but we are committed to getting this app rolled out and available to the public within the next few months. And for folks who are watching, I'm saying this in September of 2019, late September. And so we feel, pretty good about this.
Cool, thanks, Preston. Megan, any more questions before we wrap things up? Okay, thank you so much for being our sole library person in the call. It was really great to have you here. And I appreciate you letting us record so that other folks can watch this.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop our recording here. Bye, everyone.